Good evening and welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Tonight I have someone that is funny guy. He's easy to talk to, and he's just a great guy, Brian Barber. Brian, so what's going on with you tonight?
Getting ready to share some experiences, get the word out there a little bit about these guys out there.
So you were telling
So,
me you have a long history with this. Where do you want to start?
yeah, well, I mean, it goes back as far as I can remember. My grandma told me stories growing up that, in the early 70s, they had a encounter where they lived in Lake Ann, Michigan at the time, and they had a barn. And this was when there wasn't supposed to be any bears in Michigan, but that dog would chase a bear out of there about every other week. And one night it was kind of rainy, and all of a sudden that dog that chased bears come shooting in the house, hid under the bed, and was whimpering. And my grandma couldn't figure out what was going on. And her bedroom faced the window, the bed faced the window, and the lightning flash, and there was a huge silhouette in the window that filled the whole window. So
Wow, that's
she got
big.
panicked. Yeah, that it was a huge silhouette. It slapped the side of the house. And then she called my grandpa, who was a dispatcher for the Benson County Sheriff's Department at the time. So he brings the cavalry out, and once daylight breaks, they look around and they can find 17-inch tracks coming up from the woods to the window and then back out into the woods. And they
Wow.
cast them. So my uncle who lives in Japan's got the cast, but they cast those 17-inch tracks. And that was, I want to say 73 because my grandpa passed in 75.
Is this the
So, but
same
yeah, I
state
mean,
you're in now?
pardon?
Is this the same state you're living in now?
Yep. I'm only 40 minutes away from there. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's still a hot area. I saw a couple out there a couple weeks ago. Eye shine. I can't say for sure it was Bigfoot, but they were 7 foot, couple pair of eyes in the same area that incident happened in. And then I remember because when there was woods as far as you could walk, I mean, it was crazy. And growing up back in the 70s, we were allowed to play in the woods till dark, but they
Yeah.
always told us, don't go into this section of the woods because that's where Bigfoot lives. And when you would go back there, like you would all of a sudden you would hear no birds. It was dead still, and you felt like you were being watched. The hair on the back of your neck would come up, whole 9 yards. But then as soon as you left that little 2 track, then you start hearing the birds and everything again. The dog wouldn't even go back into those woods.
The dog wouldn't even go back.
No, dog refused.
Smart dog.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bigfoot and dogs don't get along too well from what I hear.
Yeah.
Um, but and then so I remember sitting there watching the show with Leonard Nimoy in Search of, and they played the Patterson Gimlin film. See Patty walking across the screen. I said, "Hey, Dad, is that what's out behind at Grandma's?" And he's like, "Well, not that one, but yeah, that's what's out there." I'm like, "There's more than one." He's like, "Yeah, it's not Santa Claus. He doesn't pop all over the country." So I mean, so I kind of grew up with it, and and even those experiences out there persisted till my grandma moved out in the early '80s, and so that's where my kind of belief started, you know, and then as far as my actual first sighting was only 2 miles from that road, from that house. I was coming up, and I'm known for going out. I love to clear my head by driving at night, throwing some Boston. Back then you cranked the cassette player up
Yeah.
and, try to rewind to the perfect spot in the song without going too far.
Good old days.
Oh, yeah. Kids will never know the skill it took to hit that mark. But I was coming up around a huge corner and there was a great big black, what I thought was a bag of garbage at the time. And I was mad because I'm like, some person, chucked this bag of garbage out. What the heck? And as I got closer, I could see it had more of a shape to it. I thought, oh, it's a big bear. To me, it looked like a very big bear at that point. And I got within 10 feet of it and it hadn't budged. And I had my high beams on, so I had to come to a stop. It was that or just go around, but I wanted to see the bear go. And then when I finally stopped, this thing stood up on 2 legs and it squared off to my car. And I had a 79 El Camino at the time, and its shoulders were literally as wide as my car. Just
Hmm.
I'll never forget that. I'm looking at those shoulders, and they are literally as wide as the outside of my car. And it was tall enough where you can only see from the chest down. But the massive arms, the hands actually came down below the hood of the car, so they were way too long to be. This was 1987, so it wasn't like there was as many hoaxers back then as there are now. And I sat there for a few seconds, and then I thought, I'm going to go hit the horn so this thing will go away. But as I'm go to hit the horn, I can see the eye shine, and it feels like it's looking right at me at that point. So, and all of a sudden I thought, something told me if I hit that horn, he's going to pull his roof off and beat the crap out of me. So I'm sitting there with my hand over the horn. I can feel him looking at me, and it seemed like forever, but it was probably 10 seconds max. And then he just turned and he didn't jump. He just stepped over the guardrail and was gone.
That left you feeling.
That left me feeling like, holy crap, they are real and they are really big. And I got really lucky at that point, was what I thought. But at that point, to give you a little backstory, why I sat on that story for almost 30 years was we lived in a haunted house,
Mm.
moved into a haunted house in Frankfurt. And at one point, you would always hear like a basketball bouncing. My grandma would holler at us, quit bouncing that ball. And we'd be downstairs and the ball was bouncing upstairs. Well, one night I was sleeping and all of a sudden the bedroom door, which always squeaked, just kind of opened up. And then walked this little shadow person with bright yellow eyes that smiled, had big, bright yellow teeth. And it was like sleep paralysis. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything. It stood there for a few seconds, walked out, and then the door closed. And I was 14 at the time. I told my aunt and uncle about it, and I got teased relentlessly about seeing something.
Oh.
And the ironic thing was, about 10 years later, they had visitors who my other aunt and uncle were there. My uncle was a very light sleeper. And my aunt was laying there. They were in bed sleeping, and all of a sudden the door opened. In walks this little shadow person. My aunt starts shaking the crap out of my uncle. He doesn't wake up. She hits him so hard she pushes him out of the bed and hits the floor, and he doesn't wake up. And then he all of a sudden it just smiled at her, walked out, and the door closed. And then my uncle woke up laying on the floor, not understanding what happened.
So
So
if Go ahead.
I immediately, within 10, it had to have been within a week. They're calling me, asking me to come over while they're still there, and they apologized profusely to me for all the teasing I got.
I
So,
was going to say, if there was ever a time in your life when you entered stage and said, I told you so, that would be perfect. But if they apologize to you, live and let live.
oh, I still give them a whole bunch of I told you so's, but um, that was just me at the time. But yeah, so I sat on that. I didn't want to know the teasing for seeing Bigfoot, so I sat on that for a very long time. And until certain shows came out, it didn't become okay to talk about that. But after seeing it, it did not it didn't push me to want to look for him anymore, because looking back and being the type of work I do in the gym, I'm pretty good at estimating people's body weights. I'm usually within 5 to 10 pounds, you know, and looking back, and I actually went and sat in that same car about 2 years ago. And at the time, I was 6 foot and I was 290. And you could fit two of me in that car, shoulder to shoulder. There was no room for anybody else with that El Camino. And then to sit there and think that thing's shoulders were that wide, even a little wider because of the doors, he had to be pushing 800 pounds. And, it was between a black and a red. I couldn't really tell because the hair would kind of shimmer in the headlights. So, and like I said, and they were two great big, they had to be close to just slightly smaller than baseball eyes, but probably 5 or 6 inches apart. But they were up and out of the light from my headlights. He was that tall. So, and how to say this. I could tell it was a male, if we just want to leave it at that, by what you could see, right above the trunk of my hood of my car. So, um, yeah, I did not want to go look for them for a very long time. And then what finally I started, the shows started coming on TV, and
Mhm.
I thought, God, I wonder what it'd be like to actually go out and. At the time, I just wanted to validate what I saw. So I actually went back to the property at first where my grandma was. It's all private property now, and yes, I was naughty and went on the property anyway, and got a few tree knocks, and scared me enough that I took off right away. It was like, okay, they're still here. I'm out, so you can have this. And then about a year later, I got into some Facebook places, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, if you really want an encounter, go to this place." I thought, all right, I'll try it. And a friend of mine who total skeptic, non-believer, absolutely 100%. I was full of crap, but hey, we were gonna go for a ride. We're gonna listen to music, and why not? So and this was in the end of 2019, and we get to this place, and I'm kind of shy anyway, so I don't do like the yells or the howls. I'll knock and I'll do claps. But at that time, I'm figuring I'm gonna get skunked. How many people on their first trip go out and find Bigfoot? Doesn't happen. And so what happened was we'd walk and I would clap, nothing. So we keep walking and talking and laughing and clap some more, nothing. And we get about a mile down this trail, and I look and it's overlooking Lake Michigan. I thought, man, that would be a great lookout. So I just took a picture of it, and then I took 2 steps up, and all of a sudden it sounded like two catcher's mitts hit together really fast. I mean, faster than I can clap. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and she's got tears in her eyes at this point. And I said, it takes hands to clap, right? And she's like, yeah, I want to go home. We're leaving. So, okay, no problem. So we started walking. And as we're walking out, you would start hearing a couple more claps and then a tree knock. And then we got a couple whoops. And I'm like, holy crap, there's more than one. So as we're walking, you can hear them kind of moving around. And then we're about halfway back to my truck, and all of a sudden the metal gate where I parked starts shaking.
Mm.
So it was something was ahead of us now at this point. And she is freaking out. And I'm like, all we got to do is walk, don't run. This is going to be okay. In my mind, I'm thinking we're going to get smacked. We're just going to eat this. This was a bad idea. But I'm trying to stay calm for her. And so we keep walking, and I turned around and snapped a picture. And when you look at the picture, you can see kind of a dark shape poking his head around the tree. I'm like, crap. So I put my keys in her hands, and I said, let's go. And we got back to the truck okay. It was fine. There were nothing with toes, but there were definitely tracks going around my truck. And then they went down
Mm.
off the bluff.
Around your truck?
Yeah.
How big were those?
I didn't measure. I totally went into that blind. I thought I was going to get skunked, so I didn't figure. I'm guessing by what's out there now that I found, probably 17 inches.
Mm. Wow.
So um, we left, and then it took me about 6 months to get the courage to go back out there. And I started going back out during the day. And now it was more validating that. Now it was also curiosity on my point. What can I do? How far can I take this? Maybe those guys on that show don't know what they're doing because they're only in town for a day or two, and then off they are to the next town. Or you get the ones that get caught faking sounds and stuff like that. But so I would start leaving. This is where I started leaving like a jar of peanut butter,
Mhm.
and then the jar would disappear. I'd go out there like 3 times a week. So it's only 45 minutes from my house. So it's a nice, easy trip. It's in the county, it's Benzie County. It's where I grew up, to where I graduated from. Know it like the back of my hand. And then when one started disappearing, I thought, okay, well, that could be anything. We've got raccoons, we've got possums. Uh, so anything was capable of taking the little jars. So then I started buying the big Walmart 4 pounders, and I would put them in the tree and they would disappear. And then I would find them and they would be lit clean. I mean, even like a, I mean, this is how clean they look.
Wow.
And I've
That's
tried
pretty
scraping
good.
peanut butter for that last little bit of for a sandwich, and I can't get them that clean.
So it's like they were cleaned and brought back.
Yeah, and
I've heard.
and sometimes as this got more and more into it,
Hmm.
I thought, well, let's see how smart they are. I quit pulling the tinfoil off. So I literally just buy the jar, take it out, and put it out there. And then a lot of the times I would go back out and I would put popsicle sticks underneath the uh, peanut butter and bungee cord it to the limb. So that way I know a raccoon isn't running off with it or something like that. And I would go out there and the bungee cord would still be around the tree. The jar would be gone. And then the popsicle sticks would get laid on the ground, and I sorted by color. Sometimes it'd just be straight lines. Sometimes there would be X's. Sometimes there would be a T.
So they wouldn't fall like that, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this is our way of saying it was us, not a trash panda.
Trash fan.
So, um, and then it was a lot of the times it would be like a trail. You would find the lid, totally unscrewed, no bite marks, no scratches, teeth marks. And then you would find the tinfoil perfectly pulled off. I mean, not ripped and torn and everything else. And then maybe 50 yards away, you'd find the jar. That was the more normal. And there was plenty of, if I had to guess, I'd say 50% of the jars, the raccoons and birds and squirrels did get into. I got a film of one because I saw something running across the valley and I thought, God, it's long and it's small, but what the heck is it? Why is his head so high? So I zoomed in with my camera and it was a huge black squirrel. But he had one of my empty peanut butter jars in his mouth. So he's running around like this, keeping his head up, trying to not trip over the peanut butter jar. So I do know, I acknowledge that. I know it's not all Bigfoot, but the ones where you would find it and you would find it higher in the tree, you know, I would put it probably about 3 feet up, and a couple of them got stuck. We're talking 8, 9 feet up in the tree, and the tinfoil would be pulled off, rolled up tight like somebody was rolling a cigarette, put inside the jar, and the lid screwed back on. So that happened 3 times that I found them like that. I'd find them with the lids on quite a bit.
So when you find a peanut butter jar with the full or tinfoil, whatever it's made out of, rolled up, stuck back in, lid twisted back on it, when you find that, how fast does it take you to look behind your back to see what's coming?
Oh, I know they're out there looking all the time. I mean, sometimes they don't take it, they wouldn't take it for a week. There was a night when I went out, I put the peanut butter in the tree, and I had found a track. It was the ideal track to cast, but I had never done it before. And I thought, let's do it on TV. It's easy enough. And of course, I go out and mix it, screw it up. It all soaks right into the ground, tracks ruined. And then I hear something back where I was. I go back, and the peanut butter jar's gone.
Hmm.
So within
Wow.
15 minutes, it would happen. At times, and it's a seasonal thing too, because up here in where I'm at in northern Michigan, deer season is from November 15th till December 1st for rifle. And the first week in November every year, they disappear. All the activity stops. And then nothing happens again till like mid-December, maybe end of December. And then you start finding tracks again. It's almost like something has an idea what's happening out there, so they disappear, go back further in the woods or wherever they go. But no, and it got to the point where I was putting 9 jars of peanut butter out. per week.
Hmm.
And I look back and of course that was during the whole crisis thing, and peanut butter was $7, $8 a jar at the time. So I was spending a little bit of money on my habit, but finding the tracks, finding imprints. There was a old wood burning barrel where I would put the peanut butter jar in the barrel, put a big rock on top of it, and stick a log through part of the bowl so that way there's no way somebody can just drag the peanut butter out. They have to pull the stick out. And I would go back, and you can see where it looked like a bulldozer went through the tall grass, and the sticks in the barrel, rocks outside the barrel, and the peanut butter's gone.
That's amazing.
I mean, so I had all this really cool stuff happening, and there was times where it got to the point where I can go out there and clap, and depending on their mood, they'll clap back within 30 seconds. And that's when they'll kind of follow. You can hear them following you around out there. You hear the occasional tree break, or you can hear the pacing, thud, 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 step, step, step. And, it used to freak me out, but now it's kind of gotten used to it. I wish I'd have, when I did this was all for me. This was purely for my curiosity. So the only documentation I had were like the pictures I took, and I didn't write anything down. So if I want a date, I got to go back and look at my phone for a date, and I can't give you the exact date because I didn't set the time on the recorder, but it was just before Christmas, and there's a road sign out there. And I was taping the recorder to the inside of the road sign, and you can hear me on the recorder. All of a sudden, you hear bang, and I go, "Oh, F, a rock." And then you hear bang, another rock. So I think there were 4 rocks in the time that I got it taped. And then everything went quiet till I taped it there about 10 o'clock at night. And then at 2:30 in the morning, you start hearing sticks banging together. Um, you hear a few knocks. You actually hear at one point what sounds like that samurai chatter people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear one, and then all of a sudden one got, I don't know if he hit his hand with the stick or something, but you know how guys yell when they smack their, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like he got really mad about something for about 5 seconds, and then it went back down to a little bit of chatter. That went on for a couple minutes. But the banging and whatever they were doing went on for almost 2 hours. So, and then when
Wow.
I went at the end of it, you can hear like something goes up and scratches, the scratch on the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I grabbed the recorder the next day, there was a 23-inch track right next to the sign, and you could see it go off up into the woods.
Wow.
So
So when you're finding tracks that big, you never feel threatened, or are you at the point if they wanted to do any harm, they would have done it. So obviously they don't have bad intent. But are there boundaries there that you don't cross with them, or have you guys figured out how to set boundaries?
yeah, I learned that you don't do any of the call blasting out there. I played the
Okay.
Ohio Howl one time, and it didn't take 10 seconds, and you could hear the stick coming through the woods, and it hit the back of my truck. I thought it blew my back window out, and it actually had hit the tonneau cover that I had rolled up. But it was like, okay, they don't like that. So I never did
No.
that again. And then the one night, you know, uh, try to do this without tearing up. My friend who was with me that night, she passed away from stage 4 lung cancer. So she was with me, and we were just we had no intentions of going Bigfooting, because she was the one that went with me the original time, got scared, didn't want to go. And I'm like, oh, let's just go out there. She'd had a few drinks, so I figured liquid courage, no problem. And when we go out there was a spot where you could see where the deer had crossed the road down one hill. The road was a sheet of ice, so you didn't see anything on the road, but you could see where it came back up the other side. And right next to the deer tracks, there were 2 23-inch prints, just 2 of them, that covered the same distance that this deer had. And I'm like, holy crap. I said, I know what made those, you know, and there was no, the snow on me was about knee deep, and there was no sign of it pushing any snow. I mean, it was like you see with a bird hop, but
Hmm.
much bigger, and they had toes in them. You could still see the toes on the bottom. And I took a picture of them in my truck lights, and then I told Shauna, I said, let's go check this out. And she's like, I haven't had enough to drink yet. And I'm like, well, I still got 2 more shots. So if you want those before we go, I don't drink and drive. So I said, here you go. You have them. So we sat there for about 10 minutes, let those kick in for her. And then we walk up, but we didn't turn the flashlights on yet. And it took a few minutes. And as we finally get up, we top the hill and get maybe 30 yards in. All of a sudden, we could start hearing like steps and tree breaks on all around us on the right and left side. And she goes, what's that? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, turn your flashlight on. So I had one of those really bright mag lights, and I turned that on, and right at the edge of that light was the guy I call Big Red, and I should have said about that before, but I'll get back to him. And he's pushing 8 feet, and when that light hit, as soon as that light came on, it brought its left arm up and covered its eyes. And I'm like, crap. I turn around, I put my keys in her hand, and I say, go. If I'm not 30 seconds behind you, you just go. And she's like, what about you? I said, it's not going to matter about me if they want me. You just go. And at that time, she was really close to being terminal. So she was like 100 pounds. And I'm pushing her through the snow, picking her up, pushing her. It's like, you're not going fast enough. Hurry up. Come on, let's go. And then it roared at us from behind. And I've been to a few rock concerts. One of them, uh, center stage at Boston, which was the loudest concert I've ever been to, but clearest. Every bass note, your clothes would vibrate, and that's what that roar did. It just went right through you. And so we picked the pace up even a little more. And as we get to the truck, open the passenger door, push her in. Well, I slip and I fall under the truck on the ice. I'm trying to scooch out from under the ice, thinking I'm going to get yanked out from the behind or something, and then my truck starts. So I go, oh crap, she's going to run me over. Never mind Bigfoot. I'm going to get squished by the truck. Luckily, I get in, push her over. We get the truck turned around. As we're backing up, you can see him standing just off the back. So if he wanted to get me, he could have got me at any time. I mean, there was no doubt. And then we left, and she's like, we need to stop somewhere. And I'm like, no, I think I'm ready for a drink. No, I'm not stopping anywhere. And she's like, no, no, no. If we're going to stop for a drink, we need to stop because I wet my pants when he roared. I'm like,
That's
oh, okay.
okay. That's
I would have
okay.
too.
Yeah.
You know, if I hadn't used a nature break probably 10 minutes before that, I would have probably done the same thing. So, because it was the most intense thing and I was the most scared I've ever been in my life at that point. I think I interrupted dinner, is what I think, because the 2 tracks and then the deer tracks, and then with the multiple sounds on both sides, I think they downed that deer somewhere just out of there. It's total guess on my part. I don't know. But so we stop, and she, luckily she had snow pants, so she just put everything in a bag and put it in the back of the truck. And we did
Bless
stop.
the heart.
Yeah. So we did stop and have a couple drinks, and we didn't talk about it. And then the next day I said, I want to go back because I want to try to recreate those steps. And she's like, you're out of your effing mind. I said, no, we'll go during the day. It's no big deal. And I convinced her so that way I had somebody to film me. And I tried going up to recreate those tracks. And I know I got the right spot because there was a cable box there. So I lined up pretty close to where I could with the cable box. And then I made steps up, and I'm pushing snow. And I think I counted it was 9 in the video. It took me 9 steps to equal those 2. And like I said, I'm 6 foot tall. So, and you can see mine's pushing snow. So if they wanted to get me, they could have that night. Later that summer, I was out by myself at night, and I'm sitting there I had one of those Seek thermals on my phone, the clip right into your iPhone.
Uh-huh.
And I'm watching that, and I've got a flashlight, and all of a sudden I can see two eye shine, but it was really close to the ground, so I was trying to figure out what it was, and the eye shine would go back and forth, left to right, but every time it would do that, it would come closer. And at one point, it finally gets close enough to the thermal where I can see his shape, and it's a great big fat raccoon. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And then all of a sudden, the raccoon gets by a tree and it freezes. And I'm like, so I'm kind of watching, trying to figure out his next move because I don't want to get bit or something. And all of a sudden, on thermal, you can see this great big red arm shoot from behind the tree. It snatches up the trash panda. You can hear the raccoon screaming for its life. And then all of a sudden, you hear a smack, like just a dead thud. And then no more raccoon screams. I'm freaking out. I don't want to say freaking out, but I'm stunned. I'm just standing there with the flashlight in my hand and the thermal going, trying to figure out what's going on. And just a few seconds later, probably 20 feet from down the hill, all of a sudden you could see two great big yellow eyes blink, blink, and disappear. And maybe 30 seconds later, it was farther down the hill. They turned around, and you could see blink, blink, and then it was gone. And so the next day, I go out and found the tree, and you could see where the 17-inch tracks had come up, stopped at the tree, and you could look up the tree, and there was a blood spot on the tree and raccoon fur.
Oh.
So, you know, and that told me then and there that, okay, they're obviously not after me because I had no clue there was one standing there waiting for a raccoon, and
Hmm.
it could have had me instead of the barbecue raccoon buffet.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have been more at ease about whether or not they're going to get me. There is a piece of property out, or not a piece of property. There is a valley out there that uh, I went into, and all of a sudden you get to this path, and all the trees are twisted like candy canes, and they're in an arch. And the arch is big enough I can walk through without bending down.
Hmm.
And I'd have to look at the picture, but there's probably 8 or 10 of them this way, forming an arch as you walk. And once I got in that arch, it was like, okay, I am not supposed to be here. So, and that was right up there with whatever it was, didn't want me there. I mean, there was no noise, birds, and just like I'd hit a wall of fear. It's like, okay, I need to go and I need not to come back here. So they do have their boundaries, that's for sure. And I don't try to do the clap. I don't, people have told me, oh, why don't you put a, tape on the outside of the peanut butter jar to try to get hair? And I'm like, no, I don't want to take him off. You know, last thing I need
You
is an
got
800-pound monkey mad at me.
well, you got a good thing going, so I ruin it.
Yeah. And, um, when people ask what to eat, I can tell you 100% they hunt the deer out there because a friend and I that goes with me occasionally, we're standing there and we're looking around trying to find tracks and stuff. And all of a sudden we hear two deer, or we hear what sounded like a huge crash. We didn't know what it was. Then we look down in the valley and see two deer and they take off. I'm like, oh, phew. As soon as those deer left, we had 3 rocks thrown at our feet.
Mm.
So
So
I snapped.
you interfered with a hunt.
Yep. We got a couple of rocks for our trouble, and I had taken a picture, and you could see it's your typical blob squatch, but you could see a great big black outline on at the top of the hill, and then farther down the hill, it looks like one's maybe laying on its belly or something because it's real close
So,
to the ground.
so as far as the blob squatch, when there's a lot of them out there. I see, I'm like, oh, but when you are in an environment, you're familiar with your surroundings, you're feeling the energy of the area, you have things happening, it becomes more than just a blob squatch, correct?
Yeah, I mean, when you're out there and you can feel that, yeah. But if you're showing somebody cold, hey, look at the picture of Bigfoot I got, and they're like, that's a stump. Well, stumps don't throw rocks, but you weren't there. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have to take my word on that. And that was when I talk about stunts. The very first time I saw Big Red that I talked about, I was actually walking down the trail and I looked up and I thought, man, the sun must be catching that stump awful funny because it's red. So I didn't know if it was like, when termites get to it and it gets wet, the wood can change colors.
Mhm.
So I was thinking that was what it was, but it just looked different. And as soon as I pull my phone up to take a picture, it stands up and then jumps off the back of the wall.
Wow.
I'm like, and he was only 5, maybe 6 foot tall at the time, but shoulders way bigger than mine. He was a stout little fella.
So you got like a clan
Yeah, there's
of
a family out there for sure. I think I sent you the picture where it was just this past fall. I was out there walking and I found, a baby barefoot, I think it was about 6 inches track. I'm
mhm.
like, oh, how cool is this? A baby one. And so I took some pictures and I sent it to a friend of mine, and he's a very, I don't want to say expert, but a very good tracker. He's been doing it his whole life. And he's like, yeah, you got a baby, you got a baby. He says, but what about the big one? I'm like, what big one? And he goes, you moron, we'll use that word. You're standing in it. I'm like, what? And I look, and if you look at the picture, you can see where my heel is next to the baby one. And then when you go up about 6 inches from my foot, you can see toes. And so that puts it right around, because I have a size 15 foot. So that puts it right around that 23-inch mark. That is the one I find out there occasionally. When I find a 23-incher, I know I'm going to find 17. It's like with mom and
May,
dad.
may I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you discovered the baby print or the small print, did you see a behavior where they become more protective or more you see the interactions kind of change when the baby come into the equation?
The only time I've actually seen that baby was I went to walk back into one of the peanut butter spots and I saw something moving in the bushes. And as I got a little closer, I could see a little black face with eyes, and it would duck behind the tree. And I'm like, what the heck? So I'm moving, trying to get a better view. And as soon as I can see it, it ducks back. And within 5 or 10 seconds, there was a knock, and then off it went into the woods.
Oh,
I'm like,
that's
holy, it
precious.
was like 3 feet tall. I'm like, oh, holy crap, And then the very next week, I go out and in the same place, same thing happens, but this time it goes on for about 30 seconds. And then there's a knock and off it goes into the woods. So it only happened twice. So there's been nothing aggressive about it so far. I hope that doesn't change. Um, but I am very wary because I am sure they're like bears and people. If you start messing with the kids, then there's going to be a real issue.
Mhm.
So if I do find a baby track, I do get kind of nervous about that. It's like, how old is it? Where's mom and dad? Or
Mhm.
even big brother,
Until the kids grow up and need to fight their own battles, I suppose.
Yeah, that was, and they are inquisitive. The one day I was up, I talk about Big Red. The one day I was out, and every time I put peanut butter in a spot, I clap twice so they know it's me. And this one was about 50 yards from my truck. So it was like 10 yards of parking lot and then like 40 yards of woods. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to see what happens if I do something different. So I put the peanut butter down, and my key rings, a whole bunch of useless keys on it that I should probably lighten up. So I sat there and jangled it as loud as I could. And all of a sudden I hear thud, thud, thud. And I go running out just in time to see him go over the bluff again in a different spot. And I'm like, what the heck? I must have scared him jingling keys. And so I'm walking by my truck and I take pictures, the 17-inch tracks. And then I'm looking and I'm like, something's missing. What's missing? And then it dawned on me, I had left a cream soda on my truck bumper and my cream soda was gone. I'm like, son of a gun. Maybe they were interested in what was in the bottle. So then I thought, okay, let's see if we can run with this. So then I would start when I would go to put peanut butter out. I'd leave my diet. Normally I drink Diet Mountain Dew. I would leave it on my truck. And sure enough, I would come back and Diet Mountain Dew bottles gone off my truck. So then I start backtracking. And sometimes I would find it just a few feet away. Sometimes I would find it at the peanut butter place and the peanut butter would be gone, but my Mountain Dew bottle was there. And so, that went on for a couple months. And I think they got bored with that. And then I started putting other things out to see what they liked and what they didn't like. I put a glow in the dark ball out inside that burn barrel. And I think it took about 2 weeks. I'd have to look at the pictures. But then the ball disappeared. Well, anything could took it, so no big deal. Just buy something else. Well, it was close to end of summer, so 3 or 4 months later, again, I'd have to look at the date, but the ball's back in the barrel. And there's not a tooth mark on it. There's not a scratch on it. I'm like, what the heck? And then it hit me so I grabbed the ball and I pulled my sweatshirt like this and I put the ball down there. It wouldn't glow. So it quit glowing and I think they put it back. So I bought another glow in the dark ball and then that one disappeared and I haven't found it since. So
Well, I find that interesting. But going back to your cream soda getting missing off the truck bed, I was speaking with someone before, and he told me that while they were away from camp, I think it was iced coffee, like
mhm.
4 or 5 iced coffees got missing out the cooler, and you could just hear them zipping the medic bag up and down, up and down, up and down. So, it's something you might, other people may want to try. So when you're getting activity, have you, and I ask a lot of people this, so it's not directed to you. Has there ever been a time when you brought someone out with you and they made it really clear they did not want them there?
Um, I'd have to say one person because it was the loudest and it was somebody who's had way more Bigfoot experience than I was. He actually came up to do a video with me and we decided to go at night. We went
Mhm.
during the day and I showed him and he's like, oh my God, you got so much activity to hear this. It's great, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, can you go at night? And I said, well, let me see if I can get a caregiver. And so I did. And we go out and we got maybe 10 foot down the path and was almost as loud as that roar, but it was a real guttural roar. He jumps, I jump, and he goes, what the F was that? I said, I don't know. You're the expert. You tell me. You know? And he's like, man, that was crazy. And so then we started walking down the path anyway.
Yeah.
And we can hear him walking, and he's using his thermal, and he's catching them on the thermal,
Uh-huh.
you know, and they weren't, I don't want to say they were aggressive, but it was a totally different vibe than when I'm normally out there.
But you knew. He may
I,
not have known that's not the norm, but you knew.
yeah, I knew something was definitely they were cautious, or they were a little irritated by it, and because they followed us, I never get followed the whole way. Usually it's on my way back or something that I know of. Let's put it on that I know of. And
Was this
I mean,
was
he's got him on thermal going down. They stood there and watched us until we turned out, and then we got followed back.
was this around the time when you discovered a small print?
This would have been 5 or 6 months before that. So I imagine there would have been quite a little one there then. So maybe that could be part of it because the family's there year round. Because like I said, I think it was not this New Year's Eve, but the New Year's Eve before. Friend and I said didn't have anything to do. It's like, well, let's go have a toast with Daryl. You know, go out there and do a couple claps, and sure enough, get a howl and say, "Here's the Daryl." Have a drink and turn around and left. So they're
So
there year
Daryl,
round.
so who was Daryl?
Daryl, he's the one off the. I call him that because of the Geico commercial.
Uh-huh.
Daryl and That's what they call him on the Bigfoot on the Geico commercial. So that's just where when, and everybody up here knows about it. So, oh, you
Yeah.
don't look this weekend? Nah, I got to do this weekend. So
Brian, you're a hot mess, buddy.
I am, and that's the good thing is I ride with it though. So I
Yeah,
don't try
it's
to
the
be
only way
anything
to
I'm
be.
not.
It's
It's
the only
like
way to be.
you have to be, and I take my share of ribbing, but then sometimes you get those I want to tell you so, like I told you so moments. I had a guy who he works for the state, he works for corrections. He's got 2 more years till he retires, and he used to give me crap the whole time. But one of the bigger Bigfoot videos out there was shot in Kalkaska, and uh, I've seen it on several channels to breaking it down and analyzing it. And it's like I know that spot. I've been there, and he hunts there deer season, hunted there his whole life. And this year he was hunting, and all of a sudden, he sees somebody. He said the guy had to be 7, 8 feet tall. He said, but he's all dressed in brown. And I started laughing, and he goes, I pulled down. He said because I didn't know what it was. And he says, and then he yelled at him, "Hey, you dumb
Naughty
person!
word.
Yeah, dumb naughty word. Uh, you realize it's rifle season, and I almost shot you." And he said it stopped for just a second, gave him a huff and a grunt, and then walked off. And
So he pretty much flipped them off in the Bigfoot style.
yeah. And when he came back with, because like I said, he was a non-believer, so we go back and
Uh-huh.
forth about me. I'll show him pictures and tracks. I get crap from him. But he hit on something because he said it walked in the weirdest way. He said it looked like it was on a bike. He said that thing had never bobbed. It just went straight. He said, so that's what threw me off about the walk. And I'm like, yeah, you going back hunting there? And he's like, not there. I'm like, what's the matter? He told me on the lot.
That was in
Like,
the same area where you have your activity?
no, that's totally different. That was in a different area, probably 2 hours away from there.
Isn't that amazing?
It's in a area where one video had come out of, that there was a guy back there hiking, and you can see something huge and black come walking out, and then he gets freaked out and takes off running. Uh, like Thinker Thunker and a couple of the other bigger guys have slowed it down, stabilized it, and they're like, yeah, that's the real deal. So, but now I've had to change. And this is where I urge people, tell them, you know what, unless you're on your own property and you have no neighbors, do not feed them, because, you know, my peanut butter thing went on for over 2.5 years. And then I got sick. I was out 3 weeks, you know, and after 1 week, two of the neighbors that are out there, their houses are probably 400 or 500 yards apart, because part of it is the conservancy. So it's private property on one part of the road and conservancy on the other. And there's only 2 year-round residents there. One of the neighbors and I get along fine. The other one absolutely wish I'd stop using his air, basically. And after about a week that I was gone, uh, there's motion lights were coming on, and they couldn't figure out what was doing it. So they looked at the video footage, and peanut butter jars were being chucked in their yard. You could see the peanut butter
Hmm.
jars bounce through the yard, and it would set the motion lights off.
Wow.
So, obviously they got kind of freaked out about it. And then about a week after that, they started having things peeping in the windows. So, and the one neighbor actually took a picture of it and sent it to the other neighbor. Obviously, he doesn't want to give it to me, but he showed me the picture, and you can see, half a squatch face, pretty darn clear, the nose, eye, looking right in this, I think she was 6-year-old little girl's bedroom,
Oh man.
second story. So that was when they decided that because nobody, I don't talk to them on a regular basis, so nobody knew what happened to me. They didn't know if I just quit doing it altogether or something happened to me or whatever. And so they called the DNR to get involved. And then it was about a week after that when I was better and started doing stuff again. And within a week, I got a phone call from the DNR. And it was a really strange thing because we have local officers here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a local office 15 minutes from where I'm at. And they called somebody from over an hour away to come talk to me. So I didn't understand that whole process. But I mean, she was very nice. Um, but when we got started on the conversation, she says, "Well, the problem is the wildlife is getting too close to the residents. You know, it's not safe. The wildlife is getting too close to it. The bears are out of hibernation." And I'm like, "The bears?" And she's like, "Yeah, the bears. You know, you're not allowed to be out there feeding bears." It's like, at first, how do I put it? I don't want to say I had an attitude, but I was a little confused. I'm like, wait a minute, they let people bait deer out there with sugar beets and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they can do that. All these people can have the bird feeders and feed the deer, but I'm going to get in trouble for this. And she's like, bird feeders are one thing. She says, but we're just telling you, you can't do this anymore. And if you do this, we're not only are we going to cite you with something to do with the wildlife, but also littering, because I didn't always find all the jars. The first 2 summers, I bet I found 80% or more.
Mm-hmm.
The third summer, it was really weird. I'd only find 1 or 2 out of 9. So I couldn't figure out what was going on there. But anyway, we're talking, and I'm like, she goes back to the bears, and I said, is this being recorded? And she's like, no. I said, okay, then. I've been out there 2.5 years at this point. I've never seen a bear track. I've never seen bear scat. I've never seen a bear, and bears don't leave 23-inch footprints, throw rocks at my truck, and clap when I clap back. And she's like, excuse me? And I said, nah, that's just. She goes, well, I want to see your trail cams. So I don't put trail cams out because I don't trust people. And she's like, you got any photos on your phone? And I did, but I'm like, no, nothing worth looking at. She's like, okay, well, this is your warning. They don't want to kick you off, but you cannot feed those bears anymore. I could not get her to say Bigfoot to save my life.
Oh,
You
they're
know,
not.
she would not
Mm-mm.
budge on that.
I,
So it and then that was when it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later when I was driving out because oh no, the other funny part of that conversation was the fact that we were talking. She's like, well, we've got these peanut butter jars that we collected. Do you want them back? And I'm like, well, what kind of shape are they in? And she says, well, some of them are chewed up and stuff. And she says, but there's. She says, I'm a little confused. And I'm like, about? And she goes, well, some of these had the lids put back on, but why did you put one date on the top and one date on the bottom? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And because when I would put the peanut butter out, I would put a date on the lid and then a date on the bottom of the jar. And if it was at the hill, I would
wow.
put each on both of them. And she's like, well, one's got like this date, and then the bottom's got this date. And I said, and you found them together? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I was so nervous. I should have asked for those jars back, but I didn't.
Sometimes it's
So
better. I guess if you took possession of them, you might got a fat ticket for littering if you wanted them back.
that was what she was hinting. I was going to get at least that, and then I was going to get kicked out of that property because technically it's private property because it's a conservancy. So whoever runs the conservancy is allowed to say, hey, you're breaking our rules, you need to go.
So there's one thing I want to bring up when we were speaking about this. What the little 6-year-old being frightened really bothered you. I could tell by our conversation that you really just felt bad. What I want to say to you, there's two types of action in life. there's malicious intent, and there's just no intent. There was no intention for you to do that to cause someone harm, or to have them throw peanut butter jars at someone's house, or had a little girl be frightened. When you did that, you did not know that would occur. You have really beat yourself up over it. Here's here's what you've told me. It quit happening. She was okay, and that your intent was not malicious. And I want you to always remember that, because life is full of, if we could go back, we would change things, but it's not. So quit beating yourself up. If anything, caution others on what to do and what not to do. She's okay, and you're not a bad person.
Yeah, I have a rough time with that
And it's okay.
because
You're not a
because
bad person.
no, but I had talked with enough people that warned me, if you
Mhm.
start doing this, they're going to expect it. There's going to be consequences if you stop. And in my own head, I reasoned it out that those people had been, I don't know how long they've lived out there, but obviously when I talked to them, the first time I talked to the two neighbors, it was about a year into it.
Mhm.
And they're like, "So are you baiting porcupines?" I kind of laughed. I said, "Do you see any traps out here?" And they're like, "Well, no. What else would you be looking for peanut butter for?" And I laid it right out there. I said, "Well, because how that happened was I was under the impression that according to the real estate maps, which they've since revised, there was a section of state land in between those houses.
Mhm.
So a lot of the peanut butter I put out was on that state land.
Mhm.
And one day when I was walking off, the people say, "Hey, you're on private property." And I'm like, "No, this is supposed to be state land." She's like, "No, this is private property. This whole side of the road is owned by this person, this person, and this person." I'm like, "Oh," and I started apologizing profusely. I didn't know. I even pulled up the real estate map that the guy showed me. And they're like, "No, that is not right. This whole side's private property. Do what you want over there. Stay off of here." And I'm like, "Hey, okay, no problem." But and then that was when they asked about, what I was doing. And I laid it right out there, and I've got a picture, a pretty decent picture where one is looking out of the trees, and you can see a shape of a head. And if you zoom in, of course, it pixelates when you zoom in, but you can see almost like the
Mhm.
mustache beard type with the face hair around here and the black cheeks and forehead. And um, showed them, and that's when they said, "Yeah, they are around." I said, "They?" And they're like, "Yep." It says, "But we've got kind of a peaceful existence with them. It's live and let live. They stayed to themselves. We stayed to ourselves." And that was another one that said Bigfoot, everything was they. So they're like, "Keep your stuff on that side of the road." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So then when I came back, they actually, after the call with the DNR asked me if you have anything else out there, get it picked up. This has got to stop. And they came out and they actually apologized to me, said, like, "You did exactly what we asked. We're so sorry, but then this is what happened." And that's when they showed me the pictures, and the security. I mean, I think it was like 7 jars within a 3-minute period come chucking through.
Wow.
What were they doing? Saving them? No wonder I couldn't find them. But so then when my biggest fear after that, I mean, I now I'm stumbling all over myself. I'm sorry.
It's
'Cause I feel
okay. Take
horrible.
your time.
I feel
Take your
horrible
time.
about I feel horrible about what happened. I know it wasn't malicious, but in my own head, I thought, well, they've lived through this long. They know not to mess with them. So it doesn't matter what I do. I'll keep it on this side. They won't cross boundaries. But, they're even smarter than we give them credit for, because they figured out how to get me back out there. You know, so after that, uh, I quit feeding. And for the first 2 weeks, I was nervous about what was going to happen.
Mhm.
because you always hear when you feed a wild animal, they're going to expect it. So what's going to happen when I come down and I don't have any peanut butter with me? And the first time things went perfectly fine, they went as normal, they clap back. And then I thought, okay, now's when I've not left anything. What happens next? And so the next week I went out, but I went a lot deeper into these trails. And instead of leaving peanut butter, I started leaving like little blue gemstones and rocks. And I thought, well, let's see what happens here. And I went back, and all the gemstones were in the same place except the blue ones. They took all the blue ones.
Wow. I heard that about blue.
So something with blue. And it was actually kind of funny because I was digging in my backpack to grab my phone. And I had one tiny little peanut butter jar, like a 2-pounder in there.
Mhm.
And I thought, I wonder what'll happen if I open this and put it in my backpack when I walk out. And so I open it, and just as I crack the tinfoil, there's a knock and a whoop. Holy crap, they're watching me and they know what this is. So then I'm like, I'm not supposed to feed them. I can't leave and tease them with it. So I just took my hand and got as much of it I could and stuck it on a tree and left because it was like, all right, at least I'm not leaving the jar. So, but that was the last time I put any type of food out for them. It's been, it'll be a year in, well, it's been about 10 months. So,
You
an
said you
activity,
talked, but you said you talked to him.
yeah. Yeah. One night I went out, a dear friend of mine passed away. She was the epitome of fitness. At the age of 76, she was still running full marathons and uh,
Wow.
suffered a massive stroke. She was on life support. And then the day they pulled her off, it took her 5 days after they pulled her off life support because her body just wouldn't quit. And so the day she finally passed, I was in tears and I thought, I just want to go be alone. I don't want to be around
Mhm.
anybody. So I went out into the woods and I had my phone with me and I was playing some sad music and I'm bawling my eyes out. And all of a sudden you hear this low, painful moan. And I thought, wow, well, holy crap, I'm going to get some activity out here. It's kind of crazy. And a few seconds later, another one. Still crying my eyes out. It happened 3 times. And then it hit me. It was like, God, it's almost like they feel my pain doing this. And so I got up and left. And I carry a dog clicker with me.
Mhm.
And that was what I'll do sometimes instead of clapping. So I went to do the dog clicker like a thank you for, showing up for me today when I really needed it. And I couldn't find my dog clicker. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
lost it way down in the woods. So I'm like, well, no big deal. And I come back the next week and the dog clicker is tied to the gate, just hang.
wow.
That was the third time they'd actually brought something back that I had lost. So the fact that they found it that quick and tied it was kind of touching to me. The first time I'd find rock stacks down there. And
Mhm.
so I would put a little dot on the rocks to make sure which way they were facing and left a
Oh,
red
that's
mark.
smart. That's
Yeah.
smart.
And then I lost the marker on the trip. And 2 weeks later, I'm out putting peanut butter out, and there's my red marker. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. I don't know who would be, how that happens. And then another time I had a I do a lot of play video games. And when you buy certain editions of the video game, they have, certain little prizes, whatever you want, gifts with them. So I
Mhm.
had the silver flashlight that had a Tomb Raider engraved on it. And one night I lost that flashlight. And so I had to use my phone flashlight to come out. And it was 3 months later, I came back and that flashlight was sitting on the hood of my truck.
Wow.
So And then the third time they returned the dog clicker. So
You know, I never thought about a dog clicker. Never
yeah,
thought of it.
it seems to work. Just something a little different. See what happens. You know, a lot
Till
of
the
people didn't know.
coyotes come in.
I, yeah, you never
Joking.
know exactly what's going to come in. That's the thing.
Dog man might get you.
My family had a dogman experience down in Nuevo before I was born. You
I'm
know, that was
waiting.
the dogman definitely. They terrify me from that story alone. You know, it was 1963 because they moved to Lake Ann in '64. And when I first heard the story, I thought it was maybe one of those that the adults told to scare the kids.
Hmm.
You know, so it was never talked about very much after that. The first time they told it, and this past summer, my mom had a widowmaker, and we were talking and talking about old times. You know how grateful we were, and I said, you know, I've been wanting to ask you about that dog man. Were you guys just pulling our legs? And she's like, absolutely not. That was a true story. I'm like, seriously? Because what happened was they were sitting in their house in Nuevo, and it was '63, so I forget what TV, you know, like TV show was on. They were playing cards because there were 7 kids, 2 adults, and all of a sudden they hear one of the dogs start barking, and then it yelps, and then this full-grown German Shepherd comes through the window, gets thrown through the window with a chain wrapped around its neck. So my grandpa grabs a gun, gets shotguns for all the 4 boys, and they go outside and it's foggy out, can't really see, but they can hear something stomping around and growling and grunting. And my grandpa was in World War II. He's like, well, we're not getting ambushed. So they got a ladder and they got on top of the house, and he had 2 of those, you know, big battery powered spotlights.
Hmm.
And they're like, whatever this is, we're going to shoot it as soon as we see it. And they can hear it walking around in the fog. So then finally they get a glimpse of it and they see the huge head and shoulders with like a wolf head sitting on top of it. But
Wow.
with where it was standing, if he would have shot and missed, the bullet would have went far enough to hit the house, you know, down the road. So that's the only reason why they didn't take a shot at it. And so they stayed up there all night, and it rummaged around in the fog for 3 or 4 hours till just before dawn. Then it just quit, disappeared.
So it took the dog out to not give away its position, so to speak.
Yeah, because it tried to get in the house too.
Wow.
While they were getting the guns, they had pushed the bookcase in front of the window to
Hmm.
cover that hole, and then all of a sudden the door handle started jiggling. So something was trying to get in. I guess that's a common thing. I didn't know that until, you know, I did a dog man show a week ago. He wanted to hear that story, so I told him, and he's like, "Yeah, it's kind of a thing with dog men. They'll jiggle the door handles where Bigfoot will just bull their way in
Take
or
the door
whatever."
down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, dogmen definitely make me nervous. You know,
Wow.
and maybe it's
I
just
don't think I don't think I've said wow so much in one conversation than I have with you, Brian.
it's and when I sit back, it's like I I I feel blessed in a way because I've been able to have this. I know people that, you see them on TV all the time that spend 3 decades in the woods, and, they jump up and down because they got a tree knock, and that's the only experience I've ever had. And here I am. I'm not gonna. I would find stuff, and I'm not gonna say it was done every week, but I would find stuff every week. So whether that's maybe that tree structure was there 6 months and I just didn't see it, just now seeing it is one thing. There's a place out there that I like to call the Bigfoot Highway because there's so many much deadfall from the leaves. It's a couple inches thick, so they don't leave any tracks. But you can go down there and you'll find imprints in those leaves, and they're all different sizes. I found 10-inch, 13-inch, 15-inch, 17-inch, and they crisscross. And I think that's how they move in between the bluffs is down through there. So,
Swamp
and
Kitty has crashed the show again. I apologize. But you said they move up and down the bluff?
yeah, because where I'm at is right on the Lake Michigan shore. So there's plenty of water, um, plenty of cover year round, deer. There's a lot of uh,
Food resources.
evergreens and birch. So they stay pretty well hidden.
Mhm.
I think the most awesome to me, because to me, I want to find a niche in this somewhere, besides the Bigfoot poop in my freezer. The
It's okay. Everybody can be a pooper scooper once in their life.
Yeah,
It's
I
okay.
know, but it it was it
Just
was
roll
look,
with it. Embrace it.
looking
That's
back
that's
at it.
hard. That's hardcore evidence
It
gathering.
is, and I'll tell you what,
Whatever.
it hardcore stinks. I'll tell you why. Well, when I
Well, that's hardcore.
found it, and it's um, I didn't take measurements and all that, but I left probably over 3/4 of it there because it was frozen to the ground, and I bet I got 2 pounds in a sweet and low box. I mean,
Listen,
it's no wonder they howl if that's what it is. I mean, I can tell you that.
everybody needs a little relief. Listen, people scoop up dog poop all the time, okay? I feel privileged to be a Bigfoot pooper scooper. I don't care how you did it. If you think that's what it is, you know your area. Just roll with it, brother. Just roll with it. Embrace it. You did it.
Yeah, I
Laugh and
do.
go on. But
Yeah, and the experience of just that was crazy enough because I got it and I put it in a double Ziploc bag because, like I said, a friend told me if I ever find something, he'll be able to get it tested. So I threw it in my backpack, not even thinking. And as I'm walking, I'm like, "What in the heck stinks? God, that's awful!" And then it hit me. Oh, it's thawing out in my backpack. And by the time I got it to my truck, it was almost nauseating. And I threw it in my truck. I thought I got halfway, maybe a half mile down the road. No, it's going in the way back. My inside of my truck stunk for 3 days, and the bed of my truck stuck for over a week, even after washing it twice.
that is hardcore. You need a t-shirt or a door prize or something.
Yeah, it was.
Respect.
I feel it, it's funny looking back. I mean, you look back and go, "What was I thinking?"
Yeah.
But
You
so
were thinking you had Bigfoot scat, and you well have it.
yeah. And the sad part is, I wish I would have known. I had no idea how to collect evidence, and I still don't. But now I know plastic eats DNA. So I'm hoping that if it's because I did reach out to Dr. Melba Ketchum at one point because I had several peanut butter jars with fingerprints on them. I mean,
Mhm.
huge, greasy fingerprints. And she put me in touch with a guy. He never called me back. It never dawned on me to call her back once I found the Bigfoot poop. But I didn't know even. I hope it's a big enough sample that maybe in the center there's something they can use if it ever gets
Have you
tested. If
have
it,
you ever heard that saying? Have you ever heard that saying? Sometimes you just need to leave shit alone.
yeah. Well, I just pray to God my power never goes out and that freezer doesn't thaw out because Elaine will have me looking for a new home with my Bigfoot poo.
Well, I'm going to say this. We're going on like an hour and 13 minutes, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's real. No, don't you dare apologize. Anyone that watches my channel knows I'll do a part two and a part three in a heartbeat. Yeah, because it's just hard to get your experiences and your thoughts in just such a short amount of time. I would love to have you back. You're welcome to come on my show anytime,
Well,
especially
thank
with your
you.
poop story. I love that. This is what I want you to remember. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. And I also want you to keep this in mind. They sense something good about you, because I can promise you, if there was anything bad about you as a human being, they would feel it and understand it. It's my opinion. Okay. So I think they know you got good energy. I think they know you're a good person, and I think they know that you carry a lot on your shoulders. I think they give back to you, and that's just how I see it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Uh,
And you're welcome. So
Thank
before
you.
we go, tell me about the Incredible Hulk back there.
The Incredible Hulk is one thing that has followed me my entire life. I bought my first comic when I was 8 years old at a flea market,
Hmm.
still have it. And as weird as this sounds, I could almost identify with him because I have a very bad temper. It takes a lot to light my fuse, but once it's lit, it's about a half inch long. So I kind of empathize with that being Bruce Banner until all of a sudden everything just breaks and then he becomes the Hulk. And it was actually kind of why I got into weightlifting. I
Really?
was like that. But yeah, so I mean, I have all of that behind me, and there's, I think, 1,600 issues. My poor
Wow.
kid, when I click off, is just going to look at this and go, "Oh crap, comics
Well,
everywhere."
you roll hard on something, don't you?
I do. When I start sinking my teeth into something, and the interests go out, the Hulk, Titanic, the whole space shuttle Challenger thing, now Bigfoot. So yeah, the Hulk
Rich,
has been my saving grace quite a bit.
which can help you through some really tough times if you've had a few of them. I want you to tell Elaine I said hello and let her know that I look forward to speaking to her one day. And I thank you for coming on the show. And I really enjoyed your conversation. You know, the poop story was just a bonus. Just so
Yeah, yeah, and if you let me come back, I'll tell you how Elaine found out about that because that's pretty comical in and of itself too.
Oh, you're coming back. You're coming back. Part two for Brian. All right. So
All right.
thank you. And I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much. You have a good night.
Thank you. Stay on, okay?
Okay.
While I have you on, do you want to do a tribute to your friend that passed that went out? I'm doing a tribute video. You
Oh,
said you had two. Yeah, so you can take as much time as you need. Tom is doing one for me Sunday. I just had uh Richard do one, so I kept had Richard on my mind. Um, so because I got a best friend named Richard too, and he did one for someone that was involved in Bigfoot and has since passed. And you're more than welcome to take a few moments to give a tribute if you like. Would you like to do that?
yeah. I mean, a quick one. I mean, because
They're all going to be condensed together and kind of fade out and have their stories back to back. So I'm
okay.
gonna give you the screen. Take your time. Speak from the heart. And when you
Um,
finish, then I'm when you finish, then I'm gonna stop the video. We'll see where our downloads are. You want a second? Take a second, because I can edit it. Okay.
um, I want to dedicate this to Shauna G, aka Shauna Wentz. She was with me the night that we got followed out. Bigfoot, one of the scariest nights of my life, and I'm sure it was hers as well. Shauna and I had been friends since we were 8 years old. We remained close throughout our life. She was one of my best friends, one of my closest confidants. She fought her lung cancer with a ferocity that is rarely seen, and she never gave into it no matter what. It never slowed her down. The chemo never slowed her down. And for that, admire her strength, and that's her strength is what keeps me going today despite my health issues. So Shauna, if you're out to see this or hear this, just know I love you and I miss you, and I'll see you on the other side.